Folks, hello and welcome to Tavern Chat. Sorry, it's Wednesday. It's Talking Crit. My once a week work spouse is going to beat me up after this. It's going to be spousal abuse. Sorry, Mike. Please don't.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Needless to say, we joke. On the screen right, I always forget how that works, but none other than Douglas Cole, gaming Ballistic, best known, I think, in our circles for dungeon grappling, but he's done a lot of work with GURPS and his own system too, Dragon Heresy.
Yeah, Dragon Heresy, the Fantasy Trip, Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game, and a smattering of 5e and OSR stuff.
So I just so folks know, I've known Doug for years. He was part of our B team when I was running once a month Friday games. So yeah, it wasn't just me commenting on these slanting corridors.
I still remember that.
That being said, Castle of the Mad Archmage is an amazingly fun house dungeon. So if you find Joe Block's adventure, or you can find it on drive-thru, grab it. I'm just throwing it out there. We had a great time with it. A lot of little Easter eggs that I didn't have to put in, he put in, and it was great. So, in any case, Doug, welcome.
Always great to be here talking crit with you guys.
Oh, you see. And also, I think Doug was the first person to interview me.
That's right.
No.
I remember I interviewed you, and then I can't remember if it was shortly before or shortly after I interviewed Stacy. And I was doing a lot of video production back then.
You were.
And that was a ton of fun. I just got, it got really expensive because I was paying for transcripts.
I was about to bring that up. You're the only one I have ever known in our corner of the universe who actually had professional transcription done of these. And I've had people request that of my dailies or these live streams. They'd love to get transcripts. And my answer is pretty much when I win Lotto, I'll be more than happy because let's be honest, making, I don't know, $2.57 a day in ad revenue from YouTube is not for transcription pay.
Yeah, no, I have been told that some of the new artificial intelligence programs are getting more robust. I tried to go through, what did they call it? It wasn't Fiverr, it was something else. Anyway, it doesn't really matter what it was. But I tried to go through one of those, outsourcing programs. And the problem is, and anyone who has ever set their hand to writing rules and role-playing material will know this, or has ever picked up a book and can't find anything will know this. Gaming writing is technical writing.
Yep.
It is not just entertaining streaming and stuff and entertaining prose. It's technical writing, and there's a lot of language that quote unquote a layperson or a normie or just someone not familiar with the world, what is a hit point? What is a hit die? Did I just hear what I think? And so what would wind up happening is I would get these transcripts back and they were almost unintelligible. So I would have to do most of the work anyway to go through and say, no, we really did say critical hit or whatever.
Build disarming.
Right, disarming or whirlwind attack or any of the other technical language that you throw out there. And so then I wound up hiring a gamer friend of mine who types at 160 words a minute. But even then, everybody's and he did a great job. But you hear things differently, and I would read and listen after I got it back. I'm like, no, I think I heard that differently, and I'd have to correct it anyway. So it was a lot of time to do it. But boy, I really liked it because it was so accessible. And there are times that I can read something where I can't watch a video. Right. He says on a streaming program. But yeah, that was fun, and I always enjoyed doing that. And I got some really fun interviews with Ken Hite and Steve Jackson, and we did a big pyramid roundtable about how to write for game magazines with like 6 or 8 people on there, and that was a hoot.
It was good times. You had a lot of great guests. I used to, but I mean, you could see that it was a very intensive. After the behind the scenes was certainly energy and money intensive in keeping that going, and they were great. And I will say that I miss them, but then again, if you were still doing them, you probably wouldn't have time to come on here with us. So, you know,
the other thing is though is that a show like this, which is me talking and you guys are the hosts, is obviously it's very different than something where you're responsible for everything.
right.
So it's and as you both well know, a day talking about gaming is a good day.
Oh God, yes. That's why Mike and I like going to conventions. Mike, do you go to play games or do you go to talk to people?
I was actually at LongCon this weekend. I'll talk about that later, but I actually played a game. I did Circus Maximus, which
okay.
But for the most part, no, I do not play games. I like to go and talk. This was somebody had to drop out early, and they said, "Can you work my chariot, man?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll work the chariot." But other than that, I don't play anything. I don't sign up for games. I don't remember the last time I ever signed up for a game. Really, the talking part's the fun part, man. Get together with everybody and talking to people.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Gaming is about socialization, and I go to a convention. Will I run games at conventions? Sure, but I run games because I'm looking to meet other people. North Texas was the first. This past North Texas was the first time I actually sat down and played in a game in I don't know how many years, and it was because James Shields signed me up for it because he was running it. So if you want to get me into a game, I guess you have to sign me up for it.
Just sign you up randomly.
Well, no, he told me. He goes, I still have like one open spot. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll have to. He goes, no, you won't. He goes, give me a minute. I go, what? He's like, all right, you're signed up for my game. I go, oh.
He game bush, yeah.
So I was playing classic D6 Star Wars. So
what a great game!
Yeah,
what a great game. Talk about a spectacular example of the rules getting out of the way.
Yeah.
So that you can just enjoy the genre. I love the D6 WEG Star Wars system.
Oh, it was fun, and he did it as an Aliens hack. No, not Aliens, Predator hack. He ran the same scenario as an Aliens hack with the other group, but it was fun as hell. But all right, so Doug, since Mike and I are professionals at this, is why we suck at interviewing people because we don't interview, we just talk. But
yes,
your initial, I guess, if you're known to people in the OSR or even fantasy gaming, you are known probably for one product.
Yes, in the OSR, I am almost certainly known for, as I say when I am at conventions, the set of grappling rules for Dungeons and Dragons that don't suck. Dungeon grappling.
Awesome rules.
It's the one line pitch. Like if I see someone staring at it if I'm working a table at a convention, I'm like, hey, come check out the rules for grappling that don't suck. But yeah, it's because it's my oldest product. It was my first Kickstarter, first successful Kickstarter. That was when I started to try it out on the advice of an industry giant who basically told me that if I tried what I really wanted to do, I would fail, and he was probably right. But if you're going to ask a luminary advice, it's a good idea to take it.
Yeah, probably.
And his advice was start small, and so I did. Anyway, Grappling System was based off my original book for Steve Jackson Games, GURPS Martial Arts Technical Grappling, but Peter Del Orto and I had written condensed the parts of that down to like 1,500 words for Tim Shorts in Manor Number 8. and we'd played them and we're like, this is good. This really works. And it makes grappling not something that you roll your eyes over. And, I was a bit of a martial artist, and Peter was even much more of a martial artist. And we just missed all the things that you could do, in a fun combat, both with for the monsters and against them, pushing people around. And so basically it was one of those things where I decided that the mistake that people would make, or designers would make, or that I made, or whatever, was to say, oh, grappling is really different. It's complicated. It's hard. Whereas sword fighting is easy and simple. And how hard can hitting something be? Well, I've since gotten into historical European martial arts, and I've done Japanese, or really Korean swordsmanship in the past. And, it's complicated. It's technical. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on. And grappling is the grabby version of that. But we are all willing to roll a 1d20 plus a bonus against an armor class or some kind of difficulty and roll damage if you hit. And I was like, well, why not do that for grappling? And instead of having hit points, you have control points. And the more control points you get relative to how big and strong the foe is, different things happen. And that allowed you to do things like grab somebody and then pull them into a stab, or they try and hit you, but you've grabbed them. So you spend some of your control to temporarily raise your armor class or lower your armor class if you're old school, really old school,
Right.
to move it in the direction of being harder to hit. And the emergent behavior at the table has been really, really good. And the people who have come back to me, the people who've come back to me who've used it, like it. So, and it's probably my best seller. It's also my oldest seller. I Kickstarted it in 2018 or so. And so maybe it's 2017. It's been out there for a while. But in any case, I think it's a good book. It was my first experience with On Time, On Budget. So, yeah.
You got a question from John Miller.
Yeah.
What's your favorite set of RPG or war game rules for simulating sword fighting?
So I will
On Guard and Flashing Blades.
I will admit that I have not sought out better rules than GURPS provides me for the intricacies of sword fighting. So I am familiar vaguely. I've recently heard of On Guard and Flashing Blades. Although I think On Guard was in relation to something else. It was maybe a downtime system or something like that. I have heard of Riddle of Steel, written by an expert longsword fighter, and a few other things. But I have been a GURPS player since 1989 and very deeply involved with the martial arts play test, and of course I wrote the grappling book for it several times actually, because I wrote a long one which was really, really hard to read, and then a really short one based on my experience with the OSR and stuff. One of the things that I am so the comment came up, still waiting for the definitive RPG adaptation of historical fencing and other martial arts. I think John Norwood would disagree with that, since he tried to do it. I think there's been people who tried. I think the problem runs into if you start to get fractal with how deeply you explore the intricacies, it stops being fun to play unless you're an expert sword fighter and know all those things. So I think there's a happy medium there, probably more than roll 1d20 plus a bonus against an armor class, but less than the some of the depths that you can get into and other things. I think, I actually was having a conversation about this today, that some of the rules for for binding and feints and all kinds of stuff that you can get with the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game strike a really good balance between a level of abstraction that allows the game to flow and a level of rules detail that allows you to do more than just hit him with my mace.
Well, fair. I mean, wasn't the
Mhm.
what was it? The was it Lost Worlds, the fighting books, where each player had their own book with the pictures on it. You declared your move, and you both went. And I don't know how much skill was involved in that. It was pretty much like paper, rock, scissors,
Right.
but with
You
more.
know, you know what game did that a long time ago? Top Secret. Each picked a move, and the cross section showed you a result.
Oh, damn, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was. I remember in Top Secret, it was weird because it was like one of those things. Top Secret, the rules run this way, but here's an entirely different mechanic. We're just going to shove in this espionage game, and it was so weird. It was such a tacked on rule, tacked on.
But that was unarmed combat for AD&D, right? It was like, hey, we're breaking off a D20 for but not for this. For this, we're going to use a weird point percentile system that has these really intricate add minus add. Screw it. It makes no
Yeah,
sense.
right, exactly. And that was actually one of my original blog posts is something like rules for grappling rules, or just rules for rules in general. And that was always use what's there, right? Don't introduce a brand spanking new mechanic if you have one or more existing mechanics or ways of conflict resolution that already exist. And that was kind of the dungeon grappling philosophy, which is everyone knows and likes and is used to roll 1d20 plus a bonus against an armor class.
Mhm.
So do that for grappling and then just call it a different damage type. You're going to have to retain those control points that damage as something else. But there's utility there. And you don't have to explain, well, what do I have to do to grapple? Roll to hit. Well, but no, just roll to hit.
Right.
Right? You're done. That's all you need. And so there's a lot of utility there. And, you know, the more that you can get people comfortable with the basic mechanic, the more that slight deviations for specificity or fun from that basic mechanic have meaning, I think.
No, I would have to agree. And I think that was one of the, I guess, failures of the original DMG is that Gary seemed like he was experiment. Like, I don't have grappling rules, but somebody submitted this at some point. I'll throw them in because it looks like people would want this. And if it was just a simple D20s related system, I think it would have been much more appreciated. Just like Subway.
It's like he had everything done, and he's like, okay, well, people might fight without swords. Okay, who's got a good hand-to-hand system? And it's just like they were on a time crunch.
Yeah,
and they just grabbed one, and nobody had ever play tested it, because I guarantee you, if you play tested that crap, you would have never stuck that in the DMG or anything. And they just threw it in there. Like, okay, yeah, here's a hand-to-hand.
Right.
Not thinking that anybody's ever actually going to do the hand-to-hand, because D&D is a fantasy game.
Typically subduing rules, right? So if you can subdue, then you're going to want to do unarmed combat at some point. But,
right. No, and that's right. And
the
thing that I found that a good wrestling or unarmed system brings is a really good excuse that if you get into a fracas with somebody at a bar, then it's a big deal to pull out a sword or a knife, or even if you do subdual damage. And I've got a problem with subdual damage anyway, just because, you know, my wife comes from a medical family, and you can't hit somebody like that and not do damage. There's no subdual damage. There's beating the bejesus out of somebody in a permanent way, or a way that hopefully they get mostly better from. Having both been injured and injured somebody in fisticuffs, you know, you're breaking people.
Yeah,
you're just not doing it with a sharp object. And so, anyway, that's an entirely different tangent. But in any case, what I like about it is it enables a version of I'm gonna throw down with someone in a bar that has a different feel, it's different constraints, and it allows you to make the person who draws the knife first kind of sus, to borrow my 12-year-old's phrase, kind of suspicious, that, oh, they're playing dirty, they're the bad person because what is it from Firefly, right? They get into a fight on U-Day, and someone draws down on Adam Baldwin. He goes, hey, they don't know kosherized rules, right? It was just a perfectly good bar fight between friends, right?
Right.
Now someone's drawing a gun. That's breaking the social contract, right? That's like not bathing in a convention.
It's only a recent social contract.
Fair. That's fair.
But all right, so now to step away from dungeon grappling, we're going to go on to dungeon fantasy, because you've done a lot of work on dungeon fantasy, which is I'm going to probably mischaracterize it, but it's like a rewrite of GURPS to be more formatted for those coming from a more traditional fantasy.
Yeah,
RPG
I think that's
background.
fair, right? I mean,
Okay.
it's so the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game was Steve Jackson's, I think, successful attempt to put everything you need for traditional dungeon crawl fantasy play in a box. GURPS is a subtractive system. It's the famous sculpture where you first remove everything that isn't your campaign from this massive, potentially massive corpus of rules. And what Dungeon Fantasy does is says, okay, the line editor did that for you. And took away all the things that are not killing monsters and taking their stuff. Or what's the line on the back? Smashing evil for fun and profit is the tagline on the back. So that's the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game in a nutshell. It's 4 or 5 short books instead of big ones, and you're not going to find blasters, right? Unless you decide to do Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, but then GURPS can handle that. But you're not going to find blasters. You're not going to find funky rules on psionics. You're not going to find weird power build systems and meta systems. You have chainmail, and you buy the chainmail, or you've got a sword, or you've got the spell list or whatever, and it's designed for it's pretty epic play. I would say that you're really looking at 6th to 10th level, centering around 8th level characters as a start, because GURPS has 1 second turn resolution, so even a schlub GURPS character can swing their sword every second. That's 5 or 6 attacks per equivalent D&D round. So you're getting up there but you're not gonna hit anything at that level. Anyway, point is that box set puts it all out there so you don't have to think about what rules to use. And authors, if you're in our shoes, don't have to sort or wonder about some splat book and do I have to include that. If it's not in the box, you don't have to write to it.
Okay.
So that's handy as well.
Because you've been supporting that pretty decently with a lot of.
I have. I started supporting it using a book called Hall of Judgment, which was a conversion of a OSR 5e module called Lost Hall of Tyr that I ran at Gen Con 50. That was showing off the dungeon grappling system, and that was the year that the box set came out. And I went to Phil Reed and I said, hey, I have this scenario. Would you consider letting me third-party publish this scenario, support of the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game? And he said, maybe. Ask again later. And I waited, and eventually I had 2 more Kickstarters. I kickstarted Lost Hall and made it a real honest-to-God book, and then I kickstarted Dragon Heresy, brought both of those in on time. I won't say Dragon Heresy was on budget because it was a vanity project, and I probably lost $20,000 on that book, but it's very pretty and very big.
I have mine. Yeah.
Right. So fun book. Did some things with the 5e system, which makes a great pegboard for homebrew, and it's got a good grappling system in the new one. But anyway, I had all this stuff. I was like, look, Phil, he was flying through Minneapolis, and I gave him copies. I said, 3 Kickstarters on time, on budget, 100% funding rate. I have the art. I have the core adventure. Can it be go time? And they got back to me and said, yes, it's go time. So that kickstarted Hall of Judgment. I took it from 64 to 128 pages based on some feedback that I'd received, because it was a convention-style adventure, which means you wave hands at things and say, okay, you got 5 characters, you're on a quest, go. Well, that's nice for a convention, but it doesn't plunk down in the middle of a campaign real well.
Right. And folks don't always understand that the same adventure that works well at home doesn't work well in a 4-hour time slot at a convention, and a 4-hour time slot at a convention adventure does not necessarily work well at home, which I learned with the early AD&D adventures.
Right.
They were all
That's exactly right. And so there was some feedback, and I took it to heart. And so Sean Punch has written a book called Cavern Town, which is a great worked example of what a location with no built adventure but a lot of hooks should look like. And so I said, I'm going to use that as a model, and I built Isfjall, which is my Viking-inspired town in the middle of nowhere that the adventurers leave from. And I got Glenn Seal, who's an astoundingly awesome guy and a great cartographer. He did my maps and redid some of the maps that were kind of a little bit iffy in Lost Hall. And I put in a couple of actual goblin, they call them Nordalfs, but they're goblins, goblin complexes, but the goblins can shift in and out of the fairy shadow dimension. So they can pop out of nowhere and jump on you, and then they just poof. And unless you've got elves in the party or can create a gate, they just come out of nowhere, stab you a few times, and disappear. So it can be a real murder hole, and traps and all kinds of stuff. So and you know, anyway, I blew it out to 128 pages, and that was Hall of Judgment. And then I said, hey, I would really like to do another one. And they said, yeah, the first one went well and people seem really interested. And they kickstarted a reprint of the box set at the same time. And we had a great back and forth. And it was my most successful Dungeon Fantasy RPG Kickstarter to date, was the Citadel at Nordvorn. And you're not supposed to love your children differently. But I'm really fond of Citadel at Nordvorn. And let me, do I have a copy that I can nab? I don't. I used to have one on my floor, but I don't. Anyway, one of the things, but I have this. One of the things that Nordvorn does is it was my first exploration of the relationship map as a tool for running games. If you've ever seen or used, let me see if I can find it so I can show it. No, not there. Okay, I'd have to dig it up again, and I don't want to waste anybody's time. So a relationship map is literally what it sounds like. You've got all the main actors, the factions, the places, and you basically say, if I interact with this person, who loves me, who hates me, and who doesn't care? And once you pluck that guitar string or you step onto that spider web, everything gets nutso from there, because I've interacted with Eric, but Bob doesn't like Eric. And so I'm interacting in what looks like a friendly way with Eric. So Bob is going to assume that I'm somehow an ally of yours, and they will start plotting against me. Blah, blah, blah. And then someone sees that I fought Bob's minions, and they assume that I'm against Bob. I don't know Bob. Somebody tried to kill me, so I defended myself. and so it starts to ripple out, and just by doing something and interacting with the world, you change the world. And the relationship map lets you plan a couple of levels back. The other thing that you can do is grab this book right here, which is simply lovely, and it's on my shelf somewhere, which is Night's Black Agents. And Night's Black Agents is a gumshoe book written by Ken Hite, but
I was
inside
about
it,
to say, yeah.
written by Ken Hite, but inside it is a technique that he probably didn't invent, but he certainly marketed it really well. What he calls the conspiramid, which is you have your low-level character, your low-level interactions, and then you take that one level higher and say, who's controlling those guys? And you have, this guy is controlling these two factions, and they split out, and blah, 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 blah. But it allows you to work up in faction level so that as you interact with things, it starts to get interesting, and there's always somebody, not always somebody, but there's frequently somebody behind the person that you're interacting with, so that there's always something there to get more going. And I have run so many games with a notepad and a relationship map and no other prep, because you don't need it. You don't need it unless, and I'm going to totally set this one up, the one thing that you might want to have is some sort of book of NPCs, or say a bestiary, so that you can do this on the fly with very little advanced prep.
Bestiary, you say?
Yeah, a bestiary. That's amazing. The leading, the shameless plug is leading the witness. But yeah, so one of the things that has been difficult for GURPS a bit is that because it is purposefully generic and universal and can apply to lots of things, it makes it really hard to wrap a cosmology around, because everyone has their own cosmology. So in my setting, I created a setting for Citadel at Nordland and Hall of Judgment. This is Viking thing. Well, it has a cosmology to it. It has a creation myth, and it has the 9 realms of some way or another, and it has what people think about undead, and it has dragons and demons and whatever, and they all have a place. And so now you can go back and write interesting fluff text and draw cool pictures that help you visualize this stuff. And so what I call the Nordland Bestiary, it's called the Nordlander Ovinnaboken, which basically means Nordlander enemy book in Icelandic. And bad Icelandic is the language of the realm in my setting. If Google can do it, I can do it. But I've had actual Icelanders shake their heads at me, and that's okay. It's amusing. There's actually a funny story about that that I'll come back around to if you remind me. But in any case, GURPS hasn't really had a coherent bestiary. It has many books of monsters. It has Monsters 2, which was supposed to be sitting here on my desk. Here we go. So it has a small book of monsters that comes in the box set. It has Monsters 2, which is 52 pages of, here's the art, and they wrote monsters around it. But what I was doing is combination of original monsters, animals that you want to run into, and I may have written 130,000 words of monster fluff text based on the SRD, because I wrote Dragon Heresy, which is a 5th edition thing, and they give you the stats and the monsters. So as part of, I wrote 400,000 words for Dragon Heresy when I first put the book together, but I couldn't afford to produce 400,000 words. That's probably 800 pages of material, which it at 800 pages of material is $200,000 to fully fund in a profitable way. And so that wasn't going to happen, right? The advice that I got about do something small first. Well, my first project that I had in hand was 400,000 words of, let's be honest, fantasy heartbreaker.
Okay.
Right? So Dragon Heresy is a fantasy heartbreaker. It's D&D, but better, based on actually talking to you and talking to Tim and other people about not really liking short and long rests. And also you can see over my right shoulder, the Viking shield there. I had been learning how to do Viking sword and shield fighting, and I was like, shields are really cool. They're like way better than +1 or +2 to armor class. So I wanted to do some stuff like that, and I had the grappling rules, and so I wrote Dragon Heresy. But that because of the way that it evolved, it had many touch points in Viking culture. And the more that I looked into Viking culture, these guys are the OG RPG party, right? I mean, their heroes, their heroic tales were a bunch of awesome dudes and dudettes get together, go sail somewhere and kill people and take their stuff. And sometimes in the mythology, it was kill monsters and take their stuff. And sometimes in mythology is you interact with gods and they probably have sex with you and maybe they give you stuff. Or that was your background or whatever. And if you wanted to get married in the culture, you'd have this thing where you'd have to go into a barrow, and in history, they would pretend that one of your ancestors would rise from the dead and he would tell you to be a good Viking husband or a good Viking wife, and you'd exchange a sword. Well, if in a world with real undead, that doesn't have to be a myth. And you dig into this stuff and you're like, this is a great world to play in. And so I wanted to write it. And the more that I wrote it, the more that I liked it, and the more that it became its own thing. Anyway, what that brings me around to is I was able to take a lot of the fluff text that I had written. Fluff, I don't mean as light and fluffy. It's got a lot of facts and research into it because I'm me. And I consult with people who are even more me than me. But there's fluff and there's crunch, right? You've got the stuff that's rules, and you've got the stuff that ties the rules together, and some would call story, even if that's a bad word for some people. But it's the theme that pulls this all together and makes it a living world. And so I have a lot of that, and I'm bringing it to the table and turning it into Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game stats. But plus, I want it pretty. I want to be able to wing an adventure. I want to be able to keep on the Borderlands and run it spontaneously because I'm a busy guy and I don't have all the time to do all that stuff. So I want to get to room number 13 and find a minotaur or a purple worm or a green slime or whatever, or a hag, and I want to run it. And I want to just look to page something of some book and be able to run that stuff. And my bestiary, you should be able to do that.
Well, now, you said story is a bad word, and I don't think story is a bad word, but maybe Mike will back me on this one. I think doing it as telling a story is a bad thing. I think that if you're putting it out there so the story can evolve with the input of the players, that is what gaming is about. But when you're telling the players the story,
right,
or no matter what they do, the story still happens as you had it planned. That's telling a story, not creating a story.
That's a big misnomer about old school D&D is that, it's not a storytelling game. Well, exactly what you said, Eric. The whole thing is the difference between a storytelling game and a D&D game that involves storytelling is in an old school game, let the story come to you. You don't force the story. You don't know when the characters go down the dungeon. Are all of them going to come back that night? Are 3 of them going to come back? Are they going to charm a gnoll and bring a gnoll back? Are they going to make friends with the bandits and bring a bandit back? You don't know what's going to happen. So the story becomes what happens after they react. Right. A pure storytelling game, the things that old school players don't like is when a DM has an idea that he wants to impose on the party. In other words, I want this party. There's an illegitimate baron that controls this territory. You're going to oppose that baron and do whatever possible. What? We don't want to do that. We want to go in the mountains and fight gnolls. Nope. You're going to fight the baron.
Maybe I think that the baron was really awesome and totally made an awesome political power play, and I want to ally with that baron.
Yeah.
That's not the story. No, Douglas, that's not the story. You can't do that.
Right. You can't do that. And that's actually one of the reasons why I love the relationship map so much. It doesn't tell you what you can do, but it is going to tell you who's going to hate you and who's going to love you for doing it.
That's pretty cool.
That reminds me. I don't know if Douglas, if you're familiar with the old companions modules, places of mystery stuff. But one of the things that the companions modules, which if anybody doesn't know what these are some 80s adventures written by Rice and Wheeler. And they're some of the best stuff ever written for role-playing games. But one of the things they did was they had, like Douglas says, a relationship chart basically took every NPC and wrote a paragraph about here's what this guy wants to get out of this adventure for the next month. And most of Wheeler and Rice's companions adventures, like Gems, Streets of Gems, Plague of Death, some of the other stuff, were built around a timeline. In other words, there's a month. You start here. After 30 days, this is going to happen if the players don't stop it. The players can stop it. They can relate to it. But if they don't, here's what's going to happen. But what they would do is they'd give every single NPC a whole paragraph worth of motivations and what they're going to do. And like Douglas said, you had to kind of form this little relationship. Okay, this guy wants. So there's a baron that's ruling this country, but his right-hand man wants to take it over. But there's also a bandit outside of town that may or may not help the right-hand man. So you have to take all this together, and based on what the players do, you form going forward. If the players approach the bandit and say, hey, we think this guy's a bad guy, this baron, but we need your help taking him over. Oh, that's okay. I'm already allied with his right-hand man, take him over. But the players go to the bandits and say, no, we're standing up for the baron. We think he's the best ruler. Then there's going to be a conflict. That's the best kind of storytelling, is when you take what, like you said, you have the motivations written out pretty thoroughly about what the NPCs are going to do. That way you don't, yes, of course you're going to throw your own slant into it, but a lot of times I know as a DM, I'll throw something in just because I think it's going to be interesting. The players are doing this. What?
Right. Or the player, or your players say, oh, well, certainly this bad guy is going to do X, Y, and Z. And as a game master, you sit back and say, yes, he is.
Yeah. Not that I'm changing anything, but that's a better idea than what I had in mind. And actually your players are happy when you see, I knew it. Well,
and the only thing, and this bit me once really hard, I had set up a situation, and it was in a modern Black Ops, like super soldiers versus aliens game. I had set up a situation, and my players absolutely, so it was sort of an espionage secret stuff, right? And they exposed all the secrets and interviewed all the people and guessed all the plans, and I had contingency plans, and they foiled those because they were thinking a couple steps ahead, and it was an almost bloodless, conflictless 4-hour session. And I got to the end, and I'm like, wow, guys, you did amazing. You cut off every avenue of escape. You outplanned. You outfought. You did blah, blah, blah. And they're like, this was the most boring day ever. Everything went right. Don't ever do this to me again. And I was like, oh, come on. I was like, no. This is the best
win.
session
Every once in a while you get
ever.
a win, guys. Come on. Take your win.
You ran a flawless mission, and they're like, it was too easy. So there is a certain amount of throwing sand in the gears because players expect it. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where you want to be able to have that story emerge in play, and it's the difference between. And I personally think if you write adventures that have situations rather than adventures that have arcs, not only is it more amenable to enabling player agency, to throw all the buzzwords into one thing, not only is it good for player agency, but it also is more portable.
Yeah.
Because a story or an arc only fits within the context of a beginning, a middle, and an end in most cases. Now, there's exceptions, but you got to really work at it to put an arc into, well, Eric, what campaign are you running? Well, frack if I know, right? But if I have a situation, you can adapt that situation to your campaign pretty easily.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of like, in a way, it's like random encounters versus random events. Random encounters are what they're there for combat, right? And that's boring. Random events are literally that. It could be something that turns into combat, could be negotiations, could be new allies, could be something that turns into nothing, could be a tree branch falling in the forest that the party hears and turns into a distraction. I'd rather go with the random events than random encounters any day in my dungeons these days. But that's an evolution as a game master, because random events are a lot harder to prepare than random encounters, but they're much more rewarding as it goes on. So.
Well, one of the things I find that helps a lot too, you're talking about what we're talking about is I have a cast of characters that we have a Facebook page for my D&D campaign, and what I do is I continue to update cast of characters. These are anybody that they run into and they appear, even the barmaids. I mean, everybody's got a story, right? Everybody has a story.
Right.
So I put a little descriptive sentence based on what they find out about the character. And I have this so halfway through the campaign, I guess we're about, I don't know, 11 or 12 sessions in now, there's this whole giant cast of characters I can choose from. So, okay, where do we want to go next? Well, they never investigated the barmaid story about this or this or that. And so I have this whole, and sometimes the players themselves will look over the cast of characters and say, yeah, what about this guy? He kind of disappeared and he was doing this. And that helps me. Oh, yeah, you're right. We need to
and the thing about that is that it sounds a little like metagaming, but I'm going to argue that it's not, because if you're wandering through a village or whatever, you're going to see the barmaid. She doesn't exist only in the bar, right? So you're going to see the barmaid, and because of that, as a character in that world, you'd be like, oh, well, that barmaid, I just saw her here, but shouldn't she be at work right now or whatever? And so you'll have these prompts that come up, but you're not in that world as a player.
Right.
And so
right.
saying,
idea,
what is this person doing is a perfectly good way of balancing the scales on metagaming versus immersion.
So now,
yeah.
But yeah, since now your new book it says bestiary and enemies, so I'm gonna guess it's more than just beasts.
It is more than just beasts. It will have so my prior Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game project was called Delvers to Grow. It's a bit of a quick start character generation methodology that allows you, with a little bit of computer support, you can make a GURPS character in 3 to 6 minutes, fully balanced and rounded out and whatever. And even if you're doing pen and paper, you can get it done in 15 minutes. I wanted it to be OSR fast. I wanted it to be TFT fast, so you can get to the game. Sean wrote a great game in the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game. I wrote a great setting in the Nordland setting, even if I break my arm patting myself on the back. But you want to play. I don't want to say, oh, look, let's spend a couple of weeks on session 0 and then eventually we'll get to it. If someone says, hey, this role-playing thing is interesting to me, I'd like to do it, then you want to do it. Right, and OSR is great for that. 5e is great for that. Fantasy Trip is great for that. In a couple of minutes, you're playing. GURPS has not always been great for that, and it is now with the Delvers to Grow product. And so what you're going to find though is usable foes. There could be a mage. Let me see if I can find some of my. You mind if I throw up some of my art?
No, throw it up.
I've got some pre-visualization of some art that I can maybe find up. So let's see. Do I have my art? Where's my art? I probably put it in the Kickstarter, in the Critters folder. Where'd it go? No. Sure. So here's. I know I copied it and pasted. Oh, here's animated art. Let's show the animated armor just for fun. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's some animated armor. I've got this is by a new gentleman whose name I probably can't pronounce, from Turkey. Here's a Fialatroll, because you got a Fialatroll. But this is a mountain troll. Nobody's seeing this, are they? I have to share my screen. No, actually, I think you have focus on the Kickstarter page. No, I have focus on the Kickstarter page. My bad. This is my problem.
You have to.
Yeah, this is my problem. So there's a Fiala troll. So that's a mountain troll, and all the monsters are going to have the monsters that are unusual sizes are going to have a human silhouette like that. That's I think her name is Asta or Ava or something like that. Anyway, it's a character that exists in one of my adventures, but she's going to be there in every silhouette. She's 5'9", and so you can show this to players. And so the character sheet for these guys. Anyway, so yes, it will be enemies. It'll have dragons and demons and bad guys and all kinds of monsters, but there will also be people. You'll have mages and fighters and spies and bandits and bandit captain and bandit followers and stuff like that. I like making in my fantasy trip character collections books were filled with people with like a couple of hundred words of backstory or characterization, just enough that the game master's like, okay, I get this person.
Right.
But one of the things that that you realize real fast is every moron is the hero of their own story, right? Every Hitler or every Saddam Hussein or every whatever is going to be considered super evil by somebody, especially if they are, or a hero to somebody else. And so, very few people are looking at themselves and saying what the operative said in the Serenity movie, which is, oh, I'm evil. I know the things that I'm doing are evil, but I'm trying to create a better world. So even he was the hero. I'm taking one for the team. I'm doing these horrible, evil things, and I will happily eviscerate you and hang you up by your entrails, but it's for the greater good.
Yes.
And so as long as you've got a bit of greater good there, that person's motivations and actions as a response, either in advance of or as a reaction to player actions, become manifest. And so I would like to do some of that with the NPCs that will show up in the enemies book.
Very cool. I mean, GURPS historically, at least from my experience, and I had GURPS, I don't know, starting with my first products of GURPS were Man to Man and Orc Slayer. So I was in on GURPS fairly early in the creation, but I always found any of the GURPS products, not just the ones that were atmospheric, like the Conan solos, but they've always been well written, but they've always been portable. Because you look at GURPS and you look at a GURPS monster, look at a GURPS character, and it's portable to anything that's old school, because the numbers tend, as long as you get a basic grasp of what GURPS is, the numbers speak for themselves. The portability is something that, as long as you're loosey-goosey, it happens real easily. And it's easier for me to convert from GURPS to OSR than it is for me to convert from DCC RPG, because GURPS just seems to be better defined in what it has.
So honestly, I find the same thing in that. So I am actually currently doing a lot of these guys because I had written a lot of these monsters up in. I've written a lot of these monsters up in 5th edition, and trying to find my damn character sheet. But so I'd written them up in 5th edition, and there we go. There's a spread that I want to show. And so turning them, GURPSifying them can be challenging. But once you're there, going to simpler systems like TFT, OSR, 5th edition, although 5th edition has its own complexities.
Right.
But once you get there, it's pretty easy. And as a secret publisher's trick, once you have the art, everything else is pretty trivial.
Right, because the art inspires.
Sure.
Art inspires, and for a book like this Bestiary, you're really talking about anywhere between 65 and 80% of the cost is in the art. And I don't mean 65 or 80% of the cost to get to PDF. I mean, you can easily spend 80% of your budget on art, including the printing.
Really?
Yeah, although I don't want to... The printing, yes. The shipping these days, God only knows. But if I were to do custom art for every creature in the book, it would be a $50,000 art budget without even blinking.
Easily. And I know that because I have paid for the various headers that I've used on the blog side.
Right. Yep.
I've paid up to like $1,500 for a header for a blog, and it's awesome. And I think
Mhm.
for the cover for the next Swords and Wizardry Continual Light printing, my total cost was about, I don't know, $13.50. I'm getting the original art in that,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
but
no, and that seemed that's I have paid I've paid thousands of dollars for a piece of art before. Mostly, some of these artists, like the artist who did the troll on the bottom left here. This is Juan Ochoa, and he's been working with me since Dungeon Grappling. I think he's contributed to almost every book that I've done. Top right is Teresa Guido. Rick Trula has been with me since the very beginning, and he's currently coloring some truly awesome pencil sketches. I brought in a new artist this time, Kagdas Demirip, who's from Turkey, and he is astoundingly good and very reasonable price. So I love paying for art. I always tell my artists that it always brings me great joy when I get to write the check, because it means that they've brought happiness to gamers by visualizing these images or whatever. And they bring, it's an active creation, and they take my stick figures and this vivid picture that I have in my brain that I can't actually do because I'm not an artist. And they bring it to life, and they add their own joy to it, and it just comes alive. Like, I got this image. Where's my Night Hag? Come on, I know you're here. Where's my hag? Give me my hag. Night Hag. So here, you got this classic, right? This is Matt Thomas, who goes by Roxas, or trying to remember his other handle. A lot of these guys go by sort of pseudonyms. Anyway, but yeah, so this is the Night Hag, and we're actually modifying this. I suggested that because the folklore has the hags coming out of their body to haunt the dreams of the sleepers, if it's done in layers, maybe we could make the hag a little transparent.
Oh.
And a little bit of a glow. He's like, oh, but it's going to be hard to do that with no background, because GURPS characters can be, let me come back to the troll again, right? The GURPS character sheets can be quite dense, informationally dense. So with all of this around, I was like, look, I'm going to wrap words around this. There may be cases where I need to push this down here and use this space. So I don't want backgrounds. I don't want something where I can't take advantage of white space. But he's like, I don't know if I can do this justice without a bit of background color. I'm like, that's fine. Do it, please. Have some background, and we can work with that. I have a worm somewhere around here kicking around. No, that's my Eder cap. This is another one. Yeah. So this is the so I didn't necessarily know this, but of course it's true. The original Dutch for Ettercap, Ettercap, which is in the 5e SRD, is Eddarkop. EDDA, and it's so, and the Eddarkop is the Dutch word for spider, and this is a bipedal web-slinging spider that does horrible things and whatever. And it's really fun for me anyway. But it's really fun to dig in to some of the history and the folklore, but sometimes the artists will come up with something, and you're like, wow, I'm gonna rewrite my monster because what you just did is so flippin' cool. But yeah, anyway, so sometimes there's background. Oh, I know what I'm looking for now. It's the Hofformer. Oh, I didn't bring it up. All right, let me see if did I copy it somewhere. All right, I'm just gonna open it up. File, open. Where's my critters? Check. Hofformer. There it is. right? So here's something. I didn't really want a background, but he really wanted to put a background in, so of course I let him. And so this is a
Damn.
sea serpent. Some of the Viking ships were maybe hold 4 people, like is shown here. It's a very small boat, but it had a single sail, recognizably a longship. But because there's a person in it, it also provides a sense of scale. So my intent is to have every single creature in a book that will start out with 128 pages, and if stretch goals allow, will grow to 240. To have its own illustration.
But that piece of artwork on the screen right now, God, I don't know. When I was a kid, it was always those collectible plates you could order out of a magazine.
Sure. Yeah.
That would be the plates that I would be ordering as an adult right now.
Right.
Oh, Mike, guess who's back? Our spammer.
It's our perv spammer. Oh,
our perv spammer just removed.
Online strips without clothing was. Wait, hold on. I don't get that. That doesn't make any sense. Online strips without clothing. You have to have clothing on to strip.
You're really jumping to the end there. Yeah.
I know. I ruined the surprise there, but he says he strips without clothing. What is he taking off? I mean, his mustache.
Well, it could be James.
Now, in the context of the bestiary, starting to strip without clothing is definitely something a monster would do.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that could be.
Bring it back to gaming. There we go.
There we go.
We've reached big time when we get spammers like that.
I know, and we have,
and repeated spammers, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm happy.
That's
they've got
your number.
Back with a new account, so this is.
They come for more. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
I almost feel flattered.
Yeah.
And I would say touched, but that could be a crime.
So this is a fun project. It's a big project.
So when's this coming? No, when's this coming? Or when is the first day of the Kickstarter, Doug?
Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.
Oh, okay. We're
on it.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, this is
yes.
So this is interesting for me because this is the first time I've been prepared enough to have the launch page up for the better part of a week. So I've got just shy of 480 people who have asked to be notified on launch. If people are interested in some of the extras, like I'm taking the stats and the art and printing them on 4-inch by 5-inch cards, so that you can put the stats down on a little standee.
And that's cool.
Right, the players see the art and the game master sees the stats. So I'm using the same printer that Fantasy Flight uses because they are freaking up the street from me here in Minnesota.
Convenient.
It's I don't have to worry about an international shipping crisis when I can freaking drive to it.
You know what? Actually, I was gonna bring that up because, and honestly, we should probably bring you back for an episode that is just about Kickstarter and the process, because you're probably the most organized Kickstarter creator I've ever spoken with. But you print locally, so
let me be careful there.
I
print locally when I can. Full color sewn binding hardback is hard to do locally at my sales level.
Makes sense.
I read your not only did I read your Troll Lord post, I called the printer, and I got a quote. And Troll Lord is not wrong. They're more expensive, but they're local. They're right there in Missouri, and they do great stuff. And I'm still not convinced that they're not the right answer, because I've seen so much money being required to ship things that even though my Eastern European printers are much, much less money to make the books, I'm not convinced the total cost of ownership is going to be lower, even though the per book cost is lower, because I could easily see these days spending many thousands of dollars to get it here. And I'm not sure, I won't know until I get quotes, because no one, because they're smart and don't want to go out of business, is willing to quote me shipping rates until the moment of.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Well, it's because they keep. It's because
when I say the moment of, I mean the moment.
Loss.
Yeah, I mean the moment of placing the order. It's not.
Yeah,
roll
they
the
don't want
dice.
to take a loss, do they? Yeah.
When I say I'm printing this many books of this many pages with these specs, they will send me a quote that I will have to place an order within a week or 2 weeks or 30 days. But you know what? One of the Troll Lore printers said that they were looking at 12 to 16 with 10 to 16, 10 to 12 week lead time for freaking paper. For paper.
Really?
Yeah, because it's wood products and they come from all over and they have to be shipped.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard I was talking to my card vendor. He's like, yeah, we have a lot of certain things and we haven't missed an order yet, but occasionally we scramble. Wow. So it is a brutal time to be someone like, and Steve Jackson Games at FNordCon said that when they printed their amazingly successful Girl Genius RPG Kickstarter, almost 3,000 backers. Almost 3,000 backers. I'd say 2,500 of which went in for print. Just a spectacular campaign for a Powered by GURPS product. And if half of those guys would come to me, so somewhat seriously, I've got 475 or 480 people. If it's crazy the difference between 475 and 900 or 1,000 and 1,400 backers, right? It's only 1,000 more people. But if I could bring in 1,500 backers on this project, my 2021 goal for my company would be made in one project.
Oh.
With 1,500 backers. So 1,500 backers, assuming blah, 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 right? I mean, I've got spreadsheets, of course. But with an audience in the thousands, and it doesn't have to be 2,000, 3,000. With an audience that numbers 1,000 or 1,400 or 1,500 people, there's no project I don't feel that I can do, be profitable on, deliver a product on time, on budget that delights the customer, and everybody wins. But you really need to get into that that 1,500 range, and once you're there, life is good.
Well, and that is, I guess, part of the Kickstarter challenge is to reach that. I don't want to call it a viral number, but it is in a way. It's a viral load. Once you hit that viral load, it kind of carries itself with its own momentum, and there are people like you said before the show, like Phil Reed. He announced the Kickstarter. What does he have out right now for? More,
what I don't know what he calls it. He's like, "Do not buy this product" or something like that. He's got an hysterical tagline for it. But every time that Phil does something, I think that he got, I don't know if he got a full 1,000, but he did a 24-hour Kickstarter once just to see if he could.
Right. And
he did, and it was successful. And I don't know if he broke 1,000, but he certainly broke the best Kickstarter I've ever done. And he did it in one day, which is why I explored bypassing Kickstarter and going to direct to backer kit on my Tower of the Moon project, which has been a very well received adventure for the fantasy trip by David Pulver, maps by Thomas Denmark, illustrated by Billy Blue. I got to show you some of Billy's illustrations. His opening illustration, or his here we go. There's Billy's work. It's a really classic, old school line work.
Yeah, I can see that in a player's handbook.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. But he's also does great full color stuff. He sent me a couple of sketches that I'm very excited about. Did I mention how much I love my art team? I love my art team. And most of these guys I've been working with for the half a decade or more, and so we get it, right? They're not going to bring to me World of Warcraft shoulder pads on my somewhat gritty Viking setting, right?
Oh, come on! But what's wrong with that? There's a lot wrong with that.
They're not going to. They're not right. So they've seen that when I say, "Oh," and the character has an axe, I mean a fighting axe, something that's here's right next to my head, right? Something that So here's the question. So this is a fighting axe. This is my wooden training sword, but it's weighted at the same weight as an actual Viking sword. Balance point is about 6.5 inches from the crossguard, so it's historically more or less right. So which do you think is heavier?
I'm gonna
say sword or axe?
I'm gonna say sword.
The sword is heavier. It's heavier by almost a freaking pound.
Damn.
This is 1.5 pounds, and it's very typical for what a fighting axe would be. It's weighted at the end, so it has a lot of the moment of inertia is far forward, but this is 2.5 pounds, 2.45 pounds. It balances here though, so it's quick and fast, but it's not lighter than a battle axe. And so they've this is modeled after I should mention this is modeled after the arms and armor Anglo-Saxon sword, almost to the ounce. I built this and I feel like I did a really nice job. The balance of the Anglo-Saxon sword is maybe 1 inch, but for a wooden training sword, I feel like I did pretty well. Anyway, so the point is that they're used to the kind of weapons and armor, and if you're gonna draw me a warrior babe, totally fine with that. But if she's wielding a sword, I want her to have shoulders, because people who swing swords around as a living have shoulders, right? They have legs because your power comes from your core and blah blah blah, right? So they know what I want in art. I want a warrior who looks like they know what they're doing, unless I'm asking for someone who doesn't.
Right.
And I've got some of those too. But we've been working together, a lot of us, for so long that I barely have to give art. Like the last project that I did 2 projects ago, I just sent the character description. I said, this is the character write-up. Draw me this. And I was never disappointed. And so it's just, I don't know, I could gush about how my artists bring these projects to life, and you can see that they do. I mean, here's this is Teresa Guido. You're not seeing, but Teresa Guido does some great creepy stuff, and a lot of these artists, I won't say they're forced to draw boring stuff. But boy, you throw 10 monsters at them, and they're like, oh, here we go. This is why I got into the art game, so that I could let my creativity go. And I'm getting some great stuff from these men and women.
Oh, now I own the Dungeon Fantasy rules. I don't know if and when I'll get a chance to run them.
Right.
It's my opportunities to run games have become limited, and generally when I do run it, it's going to be OSR.
Right.
That's what. But my experience with your prior releases, I know I can grab this and I can run this for Swords and Wizardry almost on the fly, and I always know that if Doug is putting something out, it's going to be high quality.
And I could probably be persuaded to convert this book into an OSR or a TFT or a 5e product. The hard part's the art.
Speaking of high product, we're going to segue from the highest possible product to some low product.
Low product.
Let's just say not as organized as Douglas's projects usually are.
Doug's projects are always organized. Let's
majorly organized. So we're gonna go from that. We're gonna go from that to the exact opposite. Well, not the exact opposite, but close. So do we have two kind of big stories? Which one you want to do first here? You want to talk about
they both kind of center on the same location, right?
Justin and Michael. We'll talk about Justin and Michael first, and we'll end up with the other.
I'll talk about, and I have. Listen, there's no screenshots to share. As long story less long, as Doug is fond of saying. Yesterday, I was getting trolled in multiple communities with the meme war, and I had people that moderate in my communities were like, "Hey, listen, I just deleted. I wouldn't approve this post, but giving you a heads up. There's something brewing." So I saw it. I looked. I was like, "All right, whatever." And then I see I have a PM on Discord, and of course, Ty Beard, our favorite attorney, comes. He doesn't care about the first part of the show. Ty only cares about.
He comes in for gaming stupid.
Yeah,
stupid. And by the way, I spent the weekend with Ty at LongCon. We had an absolute freaking ball. I got to go to so just digress a minute. I got to go to Ty's house on Thursday and see his very excellent game collection. It was fun because it's always fun to see somebody's collection that's not yours, because there's always holes in your collection that somebody else has. And so he's got some great stuff, and we got to hang out with him, and we got to run some Circus Maximus, actually Crashes Maximus. We got to do that Saturday night. That was fun. So if you have a chance to hang out with Ty, I heartily recommend it. It was fun, and Zach was there. His daughters were there. It was great. We had a good time at LongCon.
Oh, Zach, wait. See, Zach was there. His daughters were there. I know you mean Ty's daughters.
Ty's daughters, because I don't know that Zach has any daughters that he knows about. I don't think he does. But my brother was there. It was a kind of, Mike and Liz Stewart were there. It was a rogues gallery. Matt and Eddie were there, obviously. It was fun stuff. We had a good time. I saw Andy Solberg there. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. He was actually we had a nice conversation. I hadn't talked to him quite a while, and no, we had a ball. We had a blast at LongCon, but Ty was there too. That's Ty's territory, and so we had a good time. Ty's a fun dude. He's not just a warrior. He's also a gamer dude. So, but anyway, so past that, so you go ahead, Eric. Sorry, I had to interrupt there with a little plug there.
Listen, the story starts out as a gamer stupid story because, again, I am being meme ward. I was like, what the hell is this shit? And my initial reaction was delete and block. But then I see I have and by the way, and I was at my local pub with my lovely wife having a late lunch, and the beers and the Tullymore Dews were certainly flowing. But and I see it's Michael Havermail. Mike, I don't have your name in front of me. Nobody gets my real last name right anyway, but I don't want to screw up yours. I'm going to say Michael H. The publicity officer, and I think he's also the head of game design or something like that right now. God bless him. So he reaches out to me, and he had a legitimate concern that, and I hope I'm not saying too much, but he thought I was doing some anonymous stupid shit, and I explained to him, and I said, you can reach out to Vince if you need to confirm this. I don't do anonymous stupid shit. Basically, all the stupid shit that I do.
Stupid shit is attributed.
Yes, I don't do anything from the shadows. It's not how I operate, and having had anonymous stupid shit done in my direction, I would never wish it on anybody else. But then after that, our conversation became quite, I would say, even beyond civil. It was a nice conversation back and forth on Discord. We had a lot of areas of commonality, and I didn't feel like I was conversing with somebody that I necessarily had to keep my guard up and duck and weave on. It was a very pleasant conversation, and Michael suggested. He asked if if I would be willing to talk with Justin one-on-one, and I said yes. There was a precondition if Justin wants me to not be as focused as I am. I'm not going to share that precondition because I don't think it needs to be shared. But Justin knows what it is. I do not have an issue with burying hatchets. Vince and I back in the day were worse than oil and vinegar, and we became podcasters together and friends for a good long time. So,
well, a lot of this is kind of falls under it's like I don't know, whatever you call it, the TMZ. Somebody mentioned the TMZ version of D&D news. Is that you say something and then somebody says, Tenkar said this thing, but then they make it 100 times different than what you actually said, because you never said any of the things that you were attributed to saying. Well, and somebody says, well, how dare Tenkar say that? And then they say something, and it's probably misattributed after that. And it just goes back and forth. People don't talk to each other, and everybody in between misattributes it, because one of the things you were accused of saying, I absolutely know you didn't say.
Yes.
And so I was like, what? That didn't happen.
And we know I didn't say it because when you look at the video, the screen cap is a quote of Ernie Gygax responding to somebody who went to the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum and said, hey, what's going on at the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum? I went there and it's closed. And the answer was, well, yeah, it's closed, but it's open by appointment only. So the title of my video was "The Dungeon Hobby Shop is closed, open by appointment only," and I spoke about what Ernie said, and I didn't do the follow-up where Vince Florio followed up and said, "Well, it's closed because he gets no traffic, and why keep something open that gets no traffic?"
Well, during the winter, I mean, look, like Geneva's a resort town that gets really busy in the summer, and yes, in the winter it gets cold and nobody goes there. So there you go. I mean, that makes sense not to have it open 24 or not 24/7, but 9 to 5 during the week on right before Christmas. There's probably not a lot of people there. Although personally, if they didn't charge you for playing games there, it might be a little more people in there if you could just go in there and sit down at a table and play games. But since you have to make an appointment and belong to a club or whatever, it's probably, oh, well, we're not going to go there during the week. I mean, so it makes sense. I mean, we're not saying it doesn't make sense to close up every once in a while. It just, we didn't know that they weren't open, and to have to go there, you have to call Ernie up. Ernie has to drive into town because Ernie lives outside of town, and open up the museum so you can walk around there, which, so was just interesting.
Yes, it was interesting. So then somehow, I still don't know how, it morphed into the museum is closed and selling off its assets, which
we never said, and you never said, and nobody that I know ever said.
I agreed, but however, there was, well, this is false. It's kind of like saying, well, let's see. Eric was a police officer, correct? Yes. But he never kicked a dog, right? Correct. So, but Stephen, Eric is a police officer and kicked a dog would be incorrect. What? No, that would be an incorrect statement because I never kicked a dog. But part of the statement was true. But yes, according to the news, it confuses me. It really does. But actually, I got something else that I didn't get a chance to share this with you prior. Oh, and let me see if I can get.
Yeah, because I saw the other communications. It did have very much the appearance of Mike reaching out and saying, "Look, I just want to talk. Hey, you want to just talk and
right?
And let's get past all the TMZ
wars
in betweeners.
Bullshit was ill-conceived. If you want to get my attention, there's a lot. Listen, the same way George with the Arduin Grimoire reached out to me. He actually PM'd me on Facebook, and I answered. And I've been speaking with George, and we're going to have George DeRosa and his business partner on in January to talk about what's
Nice.
going on with the Arduin Grimoires, exciting stuff. That's for January. But the easiest way to get in touch with me is to reach out to me, not try to stick your finger in my eye and go, hey, generally not very productive, especially for somebody who was prior law enforcement. We don't tend to react to it very well. But Mike, you'll enjoy this. What?
Oh, I saw this. Well, look, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not going to bag on this because it looks like they're actually doing something with the money they got with the
I'm not
10
either,
grand. I'm not going to bag on it.
But I think what they should have included on this would be a phone number for the museum, since apparently, and again, this might be changing.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, good idea.
If at the moment I mean this week, maybe next week they're going to be open with semi-regular business hours. If you're not going to be open, having a billboard up to get people to go to your museum, and it's not open, is a waste of money.
Yeah, you don't want to go there and have to go take that trip there, and it's not open. And there's a little sign handwritten on the door like, call Ernie at home if you want to come in. That's a beat down. Nobody wants to do that.
No, but like I said, I mean, actually, my conversation with Michael was fairly productive. I mean, I got to say, getting my attention would have been a lot easier without the poke in the eye. I don't need to get poked in the eye if you need my attention. But
we say enough controversial, weird stuff. You don't have to make up stuff. I mean, seriously, we've done a year's worth of videos now. You can probably go find some crazy stuff.
Well, just take all your stuff out of context and spice it together like a bad movie.
Exactly. Yeah,
that would be easy enough. And
yes.
And listen, I only have one line that is damn near unforgivable, and and that's the in the realm of groundless legal threats, as my good friend Ken knows by now. Gil Gygax, a number of others. That's where I don't mind. You can call me whatever you fucking want, man. I was a cop for 20 years, and I worked in internal affairs for my last 12. So I was called the worst from both sides of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
It rolls off my back. But this is, I don't know if I want to call it gamer stupid, but this is, oh God, talk about your fantasy heartbreaker. The Griffin and Gargoyle. This is a proposed bar, grill, restaurant, gaming, museum-ish game location proposed for Lake Geneva, if you would believe that. And they, if you go to their Discord, and yes, they have a Discord. I did show Mike some of the documents on their it's like a written proposal on faux parchment paper, because if you are a gamer, you got to use faux parchment paper for the background of your material, as to what they have planned for the Griffin and Gargoyle Tavern. And part of their funding, which by the way, if I recall correctly, and I took a screenshot of this, I'm going to have to double check this, but I think they're selling half shares for $75,000 a share to invest in this. So if you and your gaming group has $75,000,
sure,
and you want a half a share of the Griffin and Gargoyle, and you think it's a good investment, I would.
Honey, do you have $75,000 I could borrow?
Yeah, I would say that you probably
for
have
half a share and something.
Yeah, I would say you probably have.
It doesn't exist yet. She isn't answering me. She's looking. She's not looking at me.
Oh, okay. You thank you.
Well, so here's
hold on. I got to take care of somebody else again. Oh my God! Our friend had to make a new account.
I just knocked him off earlier. I did it so quick you didn't even see me.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
so I'm going to go over. So here's the good, and the bad of this. Now, the good is I think it looks really cool. I think the idea is interesting. I like the mock-ups. I mean, yeah, nothing ever looks like the pictures, and the pictures look spectacular. Nothing ever looks that good,
No.
They have a pretty good lead time. It's 2 years from March. So that's a pretty good lead time. That they're not saying they're going to have it done next summer, which would
But they
be
want to have it done
insane.
for the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right, which is 74 to 2024.
That's a magnificent
24.
building. Is that a
It's
mock-up?
really beautiful. Yeah, it's a 3D image, or not a 3D image. It's just the imaging.
It's a rendering of.
It looks great. It's just like an old time bar inside. There's all kinds of little nooks and crannies, and it looks really fun. Now, the bad, I would say, are a couple things. How should I put this? So, and Tenkar can back me up with this, and I know a lot of people that live in the area, and the problem is the Lake Geneva City Council is notorious for not allowing things like this to happen. And there's reasons behind it. One of the reasons is Lake Geneva from the 20s, even farther back than that, it's a resort from rich Chicagoans like Al Capone, like the mob guys, and they used to go there in the summer, and that was a resort, Lake Geneva. And the way Lake Geneva likes to do it is they don't like to change anything. They like the way they are. They don't like modernization. They don't care. They just don't care. And so, I mean, and this goes with the whole fact that they just probably the most famous person from the town is Gary Gygax, and they really have given him very little recognition.
They don't care.
They don't care. It's just not important. That's not where they make their money. They don't make their money off Gary Gygax. They make their money off Chicago tourists coming there, or Chicago people coming there in the summer. So I think the idea this is going to be okayed is virtually nil. I just think they're going to look at this and laugh and say, no, this doesn't fit in with our idea of Lake Geneva, which is a bunch of old ex-gangsters rolling in the summer that just want to hang out by the lake. Now, having said that, I think it's kind of a cool idea. I would say it's going to flourish much. I mean, another thing is, and Eric's been to Lake Geneva. Lake Geneva, there's nothing there, man. It's 30 minutes away from Madison and Milwaukee and all that stuff. How are they going to keep that thing running in the winter?
Well, here's the thing. Now, I'm going to read you this final paragraph because it says, "Why here?" And the reasons why they say why here, I can tell you right away why not. But Lake Geneva is the birthplace of Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. Remains an integral piece of history to the entire genre of fantasy and tabletop role-playing. Certainly, not going to deny that. Lake Geneva was the birthplace of Gen Con. Okay, a convention which celebrates tabletop role-playing, but now takes place in Indianapolis, drawing 70,000 attendees from 50 different countries to their convention in 2019. That has nothing to do with the price of tea in China. It has nothing to do with the amount of attendees or customers your tavern is going to get in Lake Geneva. Yeah. There's nothing. The annual celebration of the co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons, Gary Gygax, is GaryCon. It takes place annually in March at the Grand Geneva Resort, just a half mile from our location. Listen, the Geneva Resort, the Grand Geneva, is in the middle of fucking nowhere in a town that's in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yes. And I mean, it's beautiful town. We're not saying it's not a beautiful town and beautiful location. It's just that it is a tourist resort town. It is, once March comes around in April, that's when it fills up. March, April, May, June, July, August. Yeah, full people. September onward, not so much. Maybe after Labor Day. So Memorial Day to Labor Day, the town's packed. Yeah, you get a lot of business during that time of year. What are you going to do? Shut it down in the winter?
Yeah, I mean,
or just
Do we think that gamers are going to want to walk a half a mile in March from the site of?
Nobody's going to go. I mean, it's a bit of a haul. I mean, this would work really good in a town like maybe Madison, because Madison's a college town, and so there's always stuff going on. I think it worked really well in a college town.
And honestly,
people that would be there during the off year, during the off season, so to speak.
A thematic. I mean, what this feels like to me is a bit like Planet Hollywood, where you have or Hard Rock Cafe, where you have a pretty interesting theme and could franchise it, but you want to start your first location in somewhere that's going to naturally draw people year round.
Well, here's the fun part. And this kind of John Miller's this piece is for you. Financing. To execute the scope of our vision, the Griffin and Gargoyle project needs startup funds to cover the cost of the architectural design, site excavation, construction costs for the 38,000 square foot structure.
Mhm.
Okay, that's probably better than the Grand Geneva's, convention area. Site landscaping, interior design features, FF&E, procurement, retail, manufacturing costs, starting inventory and supplies, as well as pre-opening administrative expenditures. Total project costs will be in the 11 to 12 million dollar range.
They need deep pockets here. They're not going to get financing from this from any. I'm sorry, the gaming community. These are people who are notoriously cheap for the most part. They're not going to finance this even for.
Now, listen. This is where it gets interesting. The business begins with the equity of 26 acres of donated commercial property with a retail value of 1.4 million. Imagine Geneva Lakes has committed to deeding Griffin and Gargoyle the required land to undertake the project in return for a small equity participation in the project. I wonder how small, but in any case, Griffin and Gargoyle LLC is also in the process of securing an SBA 504 construction loan through Greenwood State Bank in the amount of $5 million. An additional $1.5 million will come from state and local grants and funding initiatives. And now here's the fun part. Griffin and Gargoyle LLC will supplement these sources by offering up for sale 80 subordinated investor units at a cost of $75,000 per unit with equity ownership of 0.5% per unit.
You got to find 80 people.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to want to buy half a share.
Yep.
At $75,000. Crypto isn't even that much.
No,
you can buy crypto $60,000 for a full share of crypto. I'd rather buy 10 shares of crypto than 10 half shares of this. Sorry. That's shaky. You're going to need really deep pockets going in here. Now, what you could do is kind of do like an NFL stadium thing where you say, look, we have half the money right now. Or, I don't know, 90% of the money. We just need 10% of the money or something. I can see where you could do something like that. But asking for that much money, that's with no guarantee of anything. I don't know, like John was saying, I mean, what are the guarantees that you get anything for them? What if they raise $3 million and nothing happens? They get to keep the $3 million? I mean, how does this work? I mean, I don't know. It just seems a little, it seems quite up in the air. I understand the project costing that much. Honestly, that doesn't seem like that's over the top. It's just that you're going to have to really get your funding elsewhere than going to the quote unquote community. The community doesn't have that kind of money.
No, I mean, and I'll be honest with you, and this is without any kind of malice, but if you've got 75,000 that you're going to think about plopping here, I think you're better off going to the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum and buying $1,000 membership at the museum.
Yes,
because you're going to get more of a return on your investment, most likely, by spending it at the museum on a lifetime membership. And
do they want to raise this money? So if they want to, I mean, really, if they want to have this done by 2024, they better have these funds lined up pretty quickly.
Soon.
I mean, are they counting on 80 shares being bought in the next 2 or 3 months? I mean,
I just got to tell you, I mean, probably everyone knows this already, but wow, is this the worst time to do new construction? Everything that I said,
great point. Yeah,
everything that I said earlier about paper is more true of construction products. I have a friend of mine in the contracting business. He has had to turn down business. He tripled his prices, and he has had to shut down saying yes to other people because he was booked out for 2 years at triple the price.
Wow.
That doesn't necessarily mean that the materials are so expensive
Yeah.
He tried to like, okay, I'll do the usual. I'll raise prices to sort of say, hey, do you really want it? And that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough because people
No.
were in COVID. They're like, well, I am
Oh, yeah.
doing nothing else, so I'm going to improve my house.
Oh yeah.
But materials and labor and all that is crazy right now.
I can say personally, we had to set aside a kitchen renovation we were going to do this year because prices had risen so dramatically.
Right.
And it wasn't 100% necessary to do this. Something, because like Douglas said, I mean, COVID, you're sitting around doing, hey, let's renovate the house. We're not doing anything else, or whatever. And the prices had gone up so much from the last time we had an estimate that we just said, we're going to wait. That there's no point in doing it right now. So yes, this is a terrible time to be doing this kind of construction, just because the rates are so high. Workers workers cost a lot now because a lot of these workers are making tons of money doing other things. You're going to have to pay your workers more. I mean, there's so many different facets of this that just work against it.
Well, I think we covered our. Again, I don't know if either of our stories were officially this week in gaming stupid, except for the meme war. That was definitely.
It might be stupid to think that you're going to look. If I'm wrong, I'll be shocked. But it might be stupid to think you're going to get 80 people to pay $75,000 for half a share, half a share of a kick-ass bar. I mean, looks kick-ass. Look, I'll be honest with you. If I was Elon Musk rich right now, I'd call him up and say, "Hey, I'll buy all 80 shares.
I'll buy all 80 shares.
Let's do it. I mean, this looks fun. It looks great." I haven't moved to Texas though. No. I'd have to do it in Texas. Like you're gonna have to move to Texas. I'm not going up to winter in Wisconsin. No, but I mean, yeah. If you had deep pockets,
there's nothing wrong with the Midwest. Some of us live here year round.
God bless. Listen, if I want cold, I go to northeastern Pennsylvania, the Poconos. I can have my mornings with -10 degrees. And at least New York City, we occasionally go into single digits. We don't usually see negative. You usually go into like double negative digits.
In Minnesota, there's almost always a week or two where we hit -20. Certainly, there's a couple of weeks where we'll hit -10, but we'll usually dip into -20, and then we all hide.
All right,
it's 70 degrees here right now. You guys,
I mean, when your typical automobile is just giving you the finger and saying, "Yeah, no, even I'm not gonna do this." Yeah.
Well, see now, Mike, what's getting cold when I do this? Wear long sleeves. Especially in the house.
I'm still shorts and t-shirt, baby. I got the beach right behind me. It's 70 degrees here. Even up in Dallas, it wasn't. When I went to LongCon, that's the same. I
only go to Dallas when it's summertime. I can get my 100.
It's 110 degrees. Although it wasn't bad last year. It was fine last year. It was
actually very good.
Yeah, we had one of our mildest summers in a long time last year.
But it's a balmy 31 here right now.
Oh no.
Better
you than me, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, it's one of those things where when I went to college in Houston, my first job was in Dallas. So when I went up, when I came up to Minnesota chasing the redhead, I was like, she's like, yeah, go through your first winter and then you'll come out of it and 40 degrees will be warm. I'm like, that will never happen. And
no.
She was right. She was right.
Damn it. The return. Oh no, I guess not. It just popped up again on my end, but apparently it is not there. I thought I saw a spammer come back for a third time, but apparently
no. Boy, why did we get picked, man? They must know something about our audience that we don't know, or that we don't.
It's what was the Flight of the Conchord song? Too many dicks on the dance floor. Too many dicks. It's a penis fest. But in any case,
it is.
We were glad to have Doug at our penis fest this week because he's the only one of us that can actually fight with a sword, fight with an axe, probably do martial arts, and actually make any of those moves without his back creaking, which I know mine would the moment I tried it.
And he lives in the Great White North too, so that's a plus.
It is true.
But Mike, I really we got to thank Doug. Doug, thank you so much. I mean, we're gonna have to bring you back to talk Kickstarter in general
Yes.
because
And,
you are
anytime.
you
Anytime.
are
I love
certainly the one who knows the bits and pieces, and I'd love to get you on maybe Joe Block because you both approached Kickstarter from different directions, but you certainly have a good focus on it and a good handle on it. You both are very successful.
And there's lots of ways to do it, right? I'm a very quantitative, do the numbers, see what you can do kind of guy. There's lots of ways you can do it, and part of it is just not pulling the trigger. It's a lot like gun control. Don't pull the trigger unless you know what you're shooting at. That's kind of how I approach Kickstarters. I do a lot of math beforehand, and then that's my engineering training and my McKinsey training, right? You don't until you've done math 9 ways from Sunday. Don't go.
Well, it's done you well. So I'm looking.
I'm going tomorrow, so we'll see. I'm
Well, good luck. Good luck on it, Douglas.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping that more people show up than who have already said to be notified. And I will say this: it's gonna be a good book. It's gonna be a good book, and for people who are interested in seeing a big book of monsters. Maybe I mean, there's no reason why I wouldn't turn this into Dragon Heresy, and there's no reason why I couldn't take the stuff and the art and turn it into TFT or OSR as well. And who ever runs out of monsters, right?
Oh, always need more. Always.
So, and the art is really, really pretty. And the team is just doing a great job, even in the pre-visualization and some of the initial stuff. The book's going to start at 128 pages. Some really good lore and powers and interesting information about Fairy, Alfar from Alfheim, and some good world building in there. And even if I say so myself, and it's going to be a good book. And I hope that I can make a giant 240-page hardcover for everyone.
Oh, I'm hoping so too, because I'm sure I won't be backer number one. But I will be a first day back.
I appreciate that.
I don't know what time it's going to be launching tomorrow.
9 a.m., baby. 9 a.m. Central.
All right. I might be rolling it 9 a.m. Central. Oh, that's 10 a.m. my time. All right.
Oh,
yeah, I'll be awake.
You'll be up.
Hey, you better be awake, man.
Dude, I'm retired. I don't have to be awake. But
that's right. I don't have to do anything. That's what retirement means.
And God bless. But again, Doug, huge thanks for joining us this week. I believe next week it's Levi Combs.
Yes, Levi will be back. We missed his Kickstarter, but we'd like to talk to Levi anyway. So it doesn't. He's going to talk about his Kickstarter, even though we've missed it. But oh well, not our fault. It was his fault. Levi's fault.
Never our fault.
No.
Next, this coming Friday, I believe it's myself and Glenn Hallstrom, 8:00 live. Saturday. Weather permitting, Saturday may be me going out with my blue hair, walking the dog in the park. In any case, we'll be doing a live stream at 8 p.m. Rach and I for Gamers Health. So, folks, as always, thank you. Remember, in the midst of the world of COVID, use your common sense, and I'll leave it at that. Be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice, and I'll be back tomorrow.
Later, folks.
Later.